All right. Okay, we pretty much wrapped up our series on pride. We used the scripture, pride goes before destruction and the haughty spirit before stumbling. We talked about pride from a standpoint of being proactive versus reactive. I'd much rather be proactive and take a look at my pride before it causes me to relapse and lose everything I have, if I'm a wise man. And a wise man will pay attention to his weaknesses. And certainly, pride is one of those weaknesses. Does anybody have a little short testimony of how pride, what they learn? Something that, anybody have something that really relevant to what we taught on? Your pride getting to you, huh? All righty. Well, we said God's opposed to the proud, so if you're going to be proud, be that way. So God's opposed to the proud, but He gives grace to the humble. He says, therefore, humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God, that God may exalt you at the proper time. So we know the antidote for pride is to recognize pride and humble ourselves the minute it happens, and if we will do it at the proper time, God's grace will come upon us and empower us to deal with that pride. Then we know in 1 Peter 5:8, it goes on to say, be sober spirit. How many know what it means to be sober? We know what it means to be drunk and under the influence, don't we? And so devil, or Paul, or Peter is telling us here that we need to be sober, be of sober spirit. That means have an attitude that's alert, where you're aware of what's going on around you. Pay attention when you see those little blue lights come up behind you when you've been drinking. You get sober, or try to sober up real fast, don't you? You get serious anyways. And you start trying to use your head about how you're going to get out of this. So it says, Peter says, use the same strategy. Be of sober spirit, be alert, for your adversary, the devil, prowls about like a roaring lion seeking someone to devour. We know the devil is always studying us. He's always watching for us. He's looking for ways to take us out. And pride is one of the ways that he'll take us out. Now, another thing the devil uses pride for is to destroy relationships. How many understand what I'm talking about there? How we can let our pride keep us from humbling ourselves, and just old stinking pride. It keeps us from, and it's broken up many, many relationships, hasn't it? All because of pride. And so, I want to talk a little bit about pride. I really appreciate what Jaime shared last week, I believe it was, on our attitude. Because it's going to fit perfectly with what the Lord said to me about doing next. Isn't that amazing? Two different guys here, two different things, but it's the same spirit and the same flow of the spirit of what God's doing. That's just amazing how God works. But he talked about attitude now, how we can choose our attitude in relationships. I want to talk soon about responding versus reacting, and it says a soft answer, or a gentle answer turns away wrath. But a harsh word stirs it up and makes it worse. So what he was basically saying is that we have a choice on, we're going to have conflict, aren't we? That's all there is to it. It's not if, we're going to have conflict. And I like what Swindoll used to say. He says, that our attitude is, someone said it, that our attitude, the attitude that we choose in any given situation is the last of all human rights. You can't steal my joy. My joy belongs to them. People say, well, they stole my joy. Well, they didn't steal your joy. You gave it away. And we can choose to respond in a healthy way that builds up the kingdom, it's Christ-like, with meekness, or we can respond in an unhealthy way and choose an attitude of pride and arrogance, and then we've just destroyed relationships. So we have a choice of the attitude that we can have. And so this goes right along with conflict resolution. How many of you just love conflict? Isn't that just the most exciting thing to think about? Conflict in your marriage. I can't imagine, I got enough conflict in my life versus getting married, thinking I'm entering into a wonderful thing and then enter into a life of conflict. That would just be a horrible thing for me. And I think we can all agree that none of us really like conflict, but like I said, it's going to happen. We're in a world of human people, and we have attitudes. We have, I don't care how spiritual we think we are, we're going to get, our pride's going to get up. That's, this pride thing, it's not going to go away. You're not going to just crucify that thing and be done with it. Pride is the nature of our flesh. It's a sin. And it's going to be a struggle the rest of your life. And so you best learn how to deal with it. Because if you don't humble yourself, you're going to get humbled. You're going to get knocked off your horse. So it's better to be proactive than reactive. But conflict is going to happen. And but we have to learn how to be prepared that when it happens, that we can resolve it in a way that's healthy and builds up the kingdom. It's going to happen, but we've got to learn how to do it better. So we talked about conflict resolution. It's really about how to get along. How many of you ever heard somebody say, "Can't we just all get along?" Wouldn't that just be ideal that if we could all just shut up and just love each other and get along? Wouldn't it be great, a world that we're living in, that if the Republicans and Democrats could just say, "Hey, let's just all make a decision that we're going to get along," and we start working through conflict and learn how to resolve it in a healthy way. But most of the time we don't care, but we're called to work through these things and to do things in a healthy way. So we need some tools. We need to learn how to deal with it. So we have a choice. Like Jaime said, our attitude. We can deal with things in a healthy way or an unhealthy way. We can learn how to do it in a way that pleases God. Amen? Amen. So we're going to talk about how to get along. There's an old song that says, "Why can't we be friends? Why can't we be friends?" Well, we can. We can do things. You don't have to like somebody to love them. Are you with me? Jackie said a little thing about a true relationship. A true relationship is really about agape love. It's about being unselfish. To really have a true good relationship, both people have to come at it very unselfish. Most people go into marriage thinking about what's in it for me, and the marriage is already headed towards divorce when you've got that kind of attitude. I'm not even married, and I can tell you that much. But true relationships come when we set aside our differences and we make a commitment to resolve conflict, because you're going to have it. It's going to come. Like what Richard Paskey says, every good marriage, you're going to have 2 or 3 good knockout, drag down fights. It's just a matter of positioning and getting these things done. But you might as well go ahead and just have a couple good knockdown, dragouts, get it all out of the way, and realize that if we're going to love each other, we're going to have to work. It's going to take commitment. It's going to take a challenge. So none of us like conflict, but it's going to happen. And so if you want to please God and you want to keep moving in the kingdom, you're going to have to learn how to deal with relationships in a healthy way. Now, one of the things we need to know is that God is all about relationships. If God is all about relationships, we need to be about relationships. God is a relational God. Everything that He does involves having healthy relationships. Jesus Himself was a very relational person. He always had salvation in mind, but He didn't just run up and immediately start talking about heaven and hell. And He always built a relationship with them. Jesus always healed and did things. He fed them and did miracles and healings, but it was always about leading them to have a personal, intimate relationship with Him that would lead toward salvation. So Jesus understood all about relationships, and we're going to have to understand all about relationships. Now, in Genesis 1:27, it says that God created man in His own image, or the Trinity said, and they created God in their own image and own likeness. Now, so we don't know a whole lot about God, but we know God is a relational love, and we know that God is a God of love. And He wants to have a relationship with us. He wants to have intimacy. We don't know, what the Trinity was doing, but apparently one of the 4 things we do know is they're about love. So when God and the Trinity made a decision to create men in His own image, they're love. So He created them in their own likeness to express His love. God is all about love, so He wanted to express that love. I mean, think about that. That's why, so He put Adam and Eve there and created them so that He can express His love, so that He can have a relationship with them, so He can have intimacy with them. And then we know that, they perverted and corrupted that love. And God had to temporarily change those things, but then God showed His love again. John 3:16 says, "For God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whosoever would believe in Him should not perish but have everlasting life." And God demonstrated His own love toward us. While we were still yet sinners, Christ died for us. So He created Adam and Eve to love Him and enjoy and have a relationship. And they blew it. They broke the relationship. And God came up with a plan B to come to earth in the form of Jesus Christ, died on the cross to restore that whole relationship. God Himself created us to have a relationship. We broke the relationship. God went out of the way with the ministry of reconciliation when He made a decision to leave heaven, become a man, and die on a cross, being crucified, to restore that relationship. Now, that's all love, isn't it? 1 John 4:7-11 says, God is love. Talks about God being love. Beloved, let us love one another, for love is from God. Everyone who loves is born of God and knows God. The one who does not love does not know God, for God is love. By this, or because of this, the love of God was manifested, revealed, or expressed in us, that God has sent His only begotten Son into the world so that we might live through Him, or so that we might have a relationship with Him. In this is love, not that we loved God, but that He loved us. It wasn't that we really wanted a relationship, but He wanted a relationship. And He sent His Son to be the propitiation for our sins, to clear out that sin that was hostile. It was causing a broken relationship. Beloved, if God so loved us, then we also ought to love one another. If God pursues that if God goes to those leaps and bounds to show that kind of love, to have a relationship for us, how much more are we to seek to have a relationship with each other? So it's not okay to not care about broken relationships. So God loves relationships and the devil hates relationships. Matthew 12:25 says that any kingdom, Jesus is saying that any kingdom, any institution that is divided against itself is laid waste, or any city or house divided against itself will not stand. The devil knows how important unity is. The psalmist said how good and pleasant it is when brothers get together and we hang out and we're in unity. It says there's power in that. Actually, when brothers get together and dwell together in unity, they set aside their difference and they come together for a common goal. God looks upon that, and it says God commands a blessing from heaven. It's like when He sees people get right, when He sees people humble themselves, when He sees people go out of the effort to exercise the ministry of reconciliation, God takes notice, and it says He commands a blessing on there. This is what's so wonderful about broken relationships, is that when they're restored, they can be stronger than ever. Some people, I don't know if this is true, but they say when you break an arm and you reset it and it heals properly, that it's not actually weaker. They say it can actually become stronger. I never knew that. I always thought it was more vulnerable for breaks more and more, but sometimes they say the right way, it actually becomes stronger than it ever was. Some of my best friends today are relationships that were challenged at different times. And they hurt and they stung, but eventually, because of love and care, they were restored. And today, they're some of my best friends in the world. They're stronger than ever. And that's what makes marriage. Marriage gets stronger and stronger and stronger, is that you have two people that know there's going to be conflict. You go into it, realize it, but you're committed to work through it, and they get stronger and stronger and stronger. Can you imagine being married 50 years, and you look at people married 50 years, you wonder how they done it? Well, it didn't just happen. Okay? I can tell you that. Anyway, I don't want to go into that, but Lord knows. It's hard enough just but being married. It's got to be a phenomenal thing. So God cares all about relationships. God is all about relationships, and He wants us to be about relationships. Romans 12:18 says, as far as it be with you, if possible, as far as it depends on you, be at peace with all men. This is a command. It says, if possible. I mean, sometimes it's not possible. But it says that we need to do everything we can on our end, if possible, everything that we can, as far as it depends on it, we need to do everything we can to restore broken relationships and to stay in right relationships and to build healthy relationships, because that's what God is about. 2 Corinthians 5:18 says that now all these things are from God, who reconciled us to Himself through Christ and gave us the ministry of reconciliation. Think about this. Paul says that we have ministry of helps, we have ministry of gifts and ministries of prophecy. We have all these different ministries that operate, and one of the ministries is the gift of reconciliation. And Paul says God has given that to every one of us. That we're all supposed to operate in the ministry of being restored. That means to restore relationships. Restore means to mend something or to restore it back to its formal original state. Broken bone, it's out of whack. It needs the ministry of reconciliation. It needs to be restored. It needs to be fixed. So the ministry of going to the doctor and he helps me set it even though it's painful. He resets that bone and we go through the process and hopefully to restore it back to what it was, but the goal is to make it even stronger. And this is the ministry. And it's a wonderful ministry. And most of us know about the ministry of broken relationships. I don't know about you, but I was always the kind of guy, if things didn't work out, oh well, I'll see you later, And I just didn't care and didn't want to restore. So anyway, I've looked up just briefly what Webster said about defining a relationship. Webster says a relationship is the way in which two objects or two people are related or connected or interconnected or interrelated. The word is about becoming connected. You can plug your phone into the charger and sort of halfway have it connected and it's charging a little, then it flops out or whatever. So you got to get a good charge, to get a good thing, you got to get vital, you got to get it really connected. Same way in our relationship with the Lord, we go through all the mechanics of reading the Bible, serving and giving and doing good things, but sometimes we don't really take the time in our quiet time to get really vitally connected. When John talked about abiding in the vine, he was talking about he was talking about building a relationship. He says, I'm the vine, you're the branch, and if you stay vitally connected to me, we can have a beautiful relationship. There'll be intimacy in that. I'll sustain you, I'll give you the source, I'll give you sustenance, I'll be your living bread, I'll be your living water. And everything is in that relationship with God. So a relationship is about being connected, and it's about intimacy. I like what someone says, intimacy is into me see. Is that how we do it? Into me see. What that's basically saying is we're allowing people to see inside of us. How many know we can put on a mask and be phony, but true intimacy comes is when you allow a person to see who you really are. You have to be vulnerable, you have to show trust, and you have to be committed to have a relationship. So really having a relationship is, we got to get really connected. We got to be honest and genuine and allow people to see who we really are. Instead of trying to make them think who we want them to think we are and putting on a show, it's, to have a really good relationship is, man, you just got to be who you are, exactly who God's called you to be, nothing more, nothing less. And then there's a natural bonding that takes place. So a true relationship is not an external thing, it's an internal thing. It's got to come from the heart. It's a binding or connecting of the soul. This is why we have to break our soul ties when they're unhealthy relationships that are developed through sexual sin, so that we can have the right kind of relationship with the woman that God has called us to be. So relationships, here's a definition of the church. I thought this was really good because it defines a relationship. It says a church is God's family. It's made up of individuals at different stages of growth and maturity who belong to each other by a deep tie of relatedness. That's talking about having a real relationship. Being a family implies a sense of caring, trust, and responsibility. It does not imply the absence of conflict, but calls for a means of dealing with differences. Listen to this. It does not imply the absence of conflict, but calls for a means of dealing with differences that contribute to the healthy development of each member and ultimately for the overall kingdom of God. Isn't that a good one? So relationships are difficult. They take work, they take time, they take commitment. I always say that ministry is a wonderful profession, but if it wasn't for people. Are you with me? I'm an isolator by nature. And the reason I've been an isolator is because of conflict. You know? When I used to drink and drug, I like to do it in peace. I like to hang out with people that didn't get on me for drinking and, yelling at me and screaming at me. I like to get with people that would come right alongside me and, that didn't have any conflict, because I hated conflict. So I stacked the deck and put people around me where I had no conflict whatsoever. As soon as conflict arose, I was out of there, baby. You were no longer my friend. As soon as a conflict came up in a relationship with a girl or whatever, I just said, look, they'd say, you got a problem with drinking? I said, no, you got a problem with my drinking. And all that was an excuse about how to get out of the relationship. And so, yeah, I say, I love to preach, I love to teach, I love being a ministry, but man, the most difficult about being a ministry is dealing with the conflict. Not even to mention my own inner conflicts that I have to deal with. That's bad enough. I'm an undone man, but I'm also dealing with undone people. Are you with me? So I'm dealing with my own stuff, trying to help other people with their stuff, and sometimes I can't help people with their stuff because I can't deal with my stuff. And, I'm coming a long way, but still got a whole long ways to go. So, this is why AA talks about relationships. It says, fix yourself first, then get you a plant, then get you a goldfish, then a cat, then maybe a dog, and then maybe, if you really read it, then you can start looking for a relationship with a girl. So even AA knows how hard relationships. They tell you don't even think about it for a whole year. I'd say probably don't even think about it for about 5 years. So the reason we don't want conflict is because we're isolators. I like this is a good one. Look at Proverbs 18:1. I didn't have this on my thing up here tonight, I don't think, but the Lord gave it to me later. Got two out of Proverbs. These are weird ones. The second one's really good, but this one is, it says that he who separates himself seeks his own desire, and he quarrels against all sound wisdom. A person that does not desire to be in a relationship is a fool. He's not wise. It says that he who separates, or he who isolates himself, seeks his own desire, or he who is an isolator is self-centered and self-absorbed. The reason we don't want to be around conflict, we don't be around people because all we care about is ourselves. We just don't want conflict. So what that really says is that we seek our own desire. It's all about us. And it's not wise. You quarrel against sound wisdom. So the devil loves to get you in conflict in relationships. He loves to get you offended. He loves for you to get your feelings hurt and say, well, I'm just, tired of this liberty lives. They hurt my feelings. And the devil's just out there pumping iron out there across the street on those picnic tables right out there. He just sits out there and does curls, waiting for somebody to come up out of there. And he loves to get us offended. And, we quit the lodge, we quit churches, we shift pastors because we get mad or offended. We quit marriages. Next thing we know, we've been married 8 or 10 times. And it's just the devil just sits around and laughs. So the reason we don't isolate, is first of all, when we're isolated, when we're offended, when we're hurt, we're away from the rest of the sheep, aren't we? The devil loves to sit over and get you away. He loves to divide and conquer. A house divided against itself will not stand. He loves to get your house divided. He broke up Adam and Eve. Then he worked through Cain and Abel. Remember that? Okay? And he loves to work in a marriage. He loves to work in a ministry. And, and he just goes after relationships. So he loves to separate us, because when we get separated from the body, when one sheep gets separated from the body, he becomes easy prey to the enemy. But there's strength in numbers. And this is why, I got a whole message on about being my brother's keeper and covering each other's nakedness, and we may talk about that. But in Proverbs 14:4 is another really weird one, but it's loaded when you think about it. It says, where there's no oxen, the manger is clean. But on the other side, there's great revenue or wealth that comes from the strength of an oxen. If I don't have any cows in my barn, I don't worry about any poo-poo, do I? Get a nice clean barn, so I got a nice clean barn, that's all I got. But if I want to produce revenue, if I want to have gain in my life, if I want to benefit and have a profit, then I've got to be able to have a nice barn, but I've also got to have oxen. That's all. Oxen is what's going to make me some money. That's what I do. So there's the good and the bad. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We could have a great running lodge over there if we didn't bring any people into the program. We didn't bring any men into the house over there. We could have the beds made perfect and they'd stay perfect. We'd have the pots and pans stay clean. Electric bill would stay the same, would never fluctuate. We'd never have an argument, never a fist fight, no nothing, but there'd be no ministry taking place, would there? No. So what it says right there is that, hurt people hurt people. Some of you heard this joke, Peter Lord tells it, I love it. He said there was this guy that loved animals, and he was coming home from work one day on the interstate, busy. Hot, sweaty, air conditioner broke down, and he was just stop and move a couple feet, stop, move a couple feet. As he was there, he looked over, and there was a squirrel that had got hit by a car, and it was flopping around on the ground over there. But he was way over, and so anyway, like 30 minutes later, he's way down the road and starts thinking about that poor little squirrel. Somebody needs to go help him. Finally, his conscience got the better of him. He finally got off the ramp, went all the way back around, all the way back down, got back on the ramp, come back, finally got through back where he went to pick up the squirrel, and the squirrel bit him. And he took a stick and he beat the squirrel to death. So what is the moral of that story? Does he give up on animals? Okay? Or should he go beat every squirrel now and say squirrels are they're on my endangered species list. I'm going to get every one of them. So no, you don't give up on all squirrels because one squirrel bit you. You realize that the squirrel was probably hurt and he was afraid, and it bit you because he was hurt and he was wounded. So hurt people hurt people. Mr. Hugh has a sign in his office. I love it. It says, never give up on people because people are our business. People talk about, you must be, God bless you for being in that kind of ministry, and I bet it's hard. I said, no, that's what I do, man. I love it. Of course it's just difficult at times, but I'm one of them, We're all in this together, and that's what I do. We're going to have messes, but we don't give up on people because that's who we are. That's what we do. We're in the messy people. I tell myself a lot of time we get together and we start griping and complaining about this guy, that, and I'm like, well, I hear you guys. I understand. We got to just fix it. We got to help the guy. You know, we can't just. That's what we do. We're not dealing with perfect people. We're bringing in messes. We're bringing in people that need to be ministered to. Amen? Amen. Turn me. So tonight, we'll start my message now. How's that? We're going to talk tonight about the law of relationships, about loving God and loving man. Turn me to Matthew 22, 35 through 40. I had a water around there somewhere. Here it is. All right. Matthew 35. One of them, who's them? One of them conflict guys. Okay, one of them troublemakers, one of them stir-uppers, one of those people who don't want to live with. The lawyer asked him a question to test him. This guy wasn't caring about him. He was trying to get a reaction out of Jesus. He was trying to provoke him. Jesus has a choice on his attitude here, doesn't he? Huh? He can let his pride get to him, and being as smart as Jesus was, he could have probably spoke some real truth and love to him and took him out and with one move, you know. But rather than respond, the guy says to test him, he says, "Teacher, which is the great commandment in the law?" And he said to him, "You shall love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. This is the great and foremost top responsibility. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself." And it says, "On these two commandments depend the whole law and the prophets." So here you find two commands. They're not suggestions or recommendations, but they're commands or demands. This is what Jesus gave. He gave the 10 commandments or the 10 demands. They weren't recommend or suggestion. He said these are the laws. You know, do not commit murder, do not steal, go to church, and blah blah blah, covet, do all these things. And so he's referring to those, and he says of those 10, of those commandments, the two most important, number one, the top priority, first and foremost, is to love the Lord your God, your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor and yourself. It says, and upon these two depends or based the whole law and the prophets. What he says right there is that these two are the foundation of life. He says all the other commandments are important, but he said these two are foundation. These two commandments are two relationships that you have to have if you're going to be successful as a Christian. He says if you can get these two relationships, if you can love God, if you can love God in your vertical relationship, and you can love others in your horizontal relationship, he says everything else, those are the two foundations or relationships. You get those two right and everything else will fall in line. How many know it's just not that complicated? Jesus said of all the commandments and all the things we can do, he focuses on relationships. You got to love God. All your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And then you're going to have to love your neighbor. How many know we can't love our neighbor properly until we love God? Jesus, to be able to love the world and to die for the sins of the world, he first had to submit to his Father. It was a relationship of submission. He even fought it. He said, I don't want to do this thing. Not, Lord, if possible, pull me out of this mess. Don't let me go through this. I'm not, these relationships are important, but they ain't all that important. He's struggling. He knows it's going to cause a wonderful relationship for everybody. Look what it was taught. Jesus if he went to the cross, he knew that he would be able to bring everybody back in right relationship with God. But before he could do that, To restore that, he had to submit his own personal relationship with the Lord. He finally had to say, not my will, but thy will be done. So the first relationship is we have to love God with all of our heart, soul, strength, and mind. My teaching up in Indianapolis was one of them was to keep the main thing the main thing. Here you are. A lot of things to make the Christian life work, but it's really not that complicated. The main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. The main thing is to love the Lord with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. That's the main thing. Chief end and duty of man is to love God and enjoy Him. So the first law is a law of relationship, and the second one is like it, and it says that we are to love our neighbor as ourselves. So before we can love others, we've got to have God's agape love working in us, and we're going to have to keep our hearts clean, aren't we? One of the messages I'm going to be teaching is about a clear eye and a clear heart. If you're going to have a relationship, you're going to have to get the logs out of your own eye. Are you with me? Before you can take the splinters out of your own eyes. So one of the things you're going to have to do is have a clear eye. One of the clear eyes is cleaning up your messes in your relationships. Jesus talked about that. He says, if you can't love your neighbor as I've loved you, then I'm not going to love you. If you don't forgive them, I'm not going to forgive you. It's got the boomerang effect. And so the two laws of relationships are two investments. I don't know what's going to be in heaven, but you know what's going to be in heaven? I know one thing that's going to be in heaven for sure, and that's going to be God and people. I'm sure there'll probably be Gator football, and we'll win every game finally. We'll score a touchdown maybe. Might be some golfing up there, but we know there's going to be God and a whole bunch of people. So if you want to get rich in eternity and live on forever, the best investment you can make while down here on the planet is to invest in your relationship with God. Love with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and invest into your neighbors. How many know your neighbor is not the person that lives next door to you? The word neighbor means near ones. What he's saying right there, you don't just have to love the guy on your right and the guy on your left. It's like anybody that God brings near in your life. It could be in the Walmart shopping center. It could be the beauty parlor, at the gym, or wherever. I was on a plane in 2 hours. I just wanted to sit there and take a little nap and relax. And the Lord said, you need to talk to the people around you, So I talked to the guy, which was cool. How you doing? I'm such and such. Where are you from? And we were cool there. We went on back to sleep. But then I made a mistake and talked to the girl next to me. And she just happened to have a couple of vodkas, And so anyway, I finally broke down and asked her a question, and that was all it took. I had opened up another hour and a half. Anyway, it ended up being really good, actually. Once I got over myself and wanted to be an isolator and wasn't being selfish, and I decided, and come to find out, she had just flown from Vero Beach to see her brother to surprise him because he'd been in prison for 21 years. At the same time, she saw her sister, who has 30 days left to live because she's got cirrhosis of the liver and is an alcoholic and smoking crack and meth and who knows everything. And she was grieved. She needed someone to talk to. Finally, she says, I hope you don't care that I'm venting on it. I started to say, well, yeah, I really do. But I said, no, it's fine. And then I engaged. I quit making it a drudgery, and I just entered in and said, let me enjoy this. And then I started enjoying. Next thing you know, we're showing pictures, and I'm showing her the ministry. I'm talking about who I am. And she's like, wow, I want to come to church. So anyway. So how are we doing on these two relationships, loving God and loving man? It's hard to have these two relationships because sometimes, how many know we have a hard time loving God? I teach on this a lot. Mad at God, don't even know about it. Here we're told to journal and have this wonderful listen and talk relationship, and then I find out we're expecting these guys to love the God with all heart, soul, mind, and strength, and they're still mad as heck at God. It'd be kind of hard to crawl in and have an intimate love relationship with your wife if you're mad at each other. Isn't it kind of hard? Yes. I can't imagine how hard that would be. How can you crawl in bed and be lovers of God and love with all your heart, soul, mind if you're mad at Him and you're still angry? So you got to clean up your heart with God. And how can you have a relationship with people around you if we've got unforgiveness? So this is where we're headed with this. We got to clean up our hearts. So as far as it be with us, it depends on us. We are to do everything we can to be about relationships. God has given us the ministry of reconciliation and responsibility. So what I'm saying, it's not okay to not be right with God. It's not okay to be unright with people. So we're going to start talking next week about conflict resolution. Why can't we get along, or how to get along? And we're going to talk about learning to respond versus react. How to respond in a healthy way versus getting the reaction starting next week. Amen? Amen. All right. See you.